Welcome back to What Stories Say with Seth and Seth. I'm Seth.
I am also Seth.
And today we're going to break just a little bit of our tradition of our theme song, because rather than doing a theme song for a book, which we've been doing exclusively up to this point, today we're actually going to do a theme song for a movie, which happens to be probably my second favorite animated movie of all time, after The Emperor's New Groove being by far my favorite.
Maybe we should do a theme song for that one eventually.
We probably should. This one is my second favorite, and I really do love this movie. This is Seth has come up with the movie and the theme song, so we're gonna turn it over to Seth for this.
Yeah, so our family has been watching through a bunch of the Pixar movies, watching all of them in order recently. And the last one that we watched was the movie WALL-E, which is just fantastic. Like, it really is a really beautiful piece of art, and it's just a great story. It's
a brilliantly written piece of I don't know, the screenplay is just so brilliant.
Yeah,
so brilliant, and to have the emotions and the reality come to life so well in these robots who don't really speak.
Yeah, there's a significant portion at the beginning of the movie that has basically no actual dialogue, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we watched this movie. It's really fantastic. And I was listening to a song by Ed Sheeran that I think fits it really well. So I wanted to do it for a theme song. And that song is called Celestial.
And as we get going, you'll see why. Again, it's amazing to me how well these songs fit these stories when you actually go through and break them down and break down the songs and the story and how well they go together. And this one, just like the other songs, it just fits. So,
yeah.
Sorry, Seth.
Yep, no problem. So in WALL-E, we have, there's a lot of other things going on, but one of the core parts of it, maybe the most important part of it, is it's a love story. It's a love story between two robots. And so as we go through, we're going to see the first verse of this is going to be from Wall-E's perspective and talking about him, and the second verse is from Eve's. It actually works out really well that way, which is cool.
And just an interesting thing about this movie, these robots were not built with the intention of having emotional responses to each other.
No, it doesn't seem like it.
They're really built to be just functionality is what they're built for. So WALL-E is basically a garbage truck robot, and that's his purpose. That's what he was built for, was to get rid of trash.
And Eve was built as a scouting probe to scan the earth and see if there is any life there, to see if it's livable for humanity to go back.
Right. This is and just so you know, this is a story about, it's a post-apocalyptic story.
Yeah. After
the apocalypse of the earth, and in this story, the apocalypse comes from human beings being so caught up in consumerism that the
earth fills up with trash and waste and pollution and becomes unlivable.
Right. And so then this movie, when we come in, I think it's 700 years after the humans have left Earth, and that's why we've got this probe that goes back to Earth every now and then to just check and see if the conditions on Earth are livable, and so then you get this the movie is about this romance between this garbage truck robot
who's on Earth cleaning everything up,
right, and this probe robot, and so it's really a fun movie.
And it's not focused on a lot or made really clear in the movie exactly how much the robots being sentient was an intentional design choice.
Right.
But it still is definitely the case that they have their own specific robotic purposes that they're supposed to be fulfilling, and that this romance that happens between them is, in a way, almost miraculous. Especially considering the end of the film, it absolutely is.
Totally, and there's a part in the beginning of the movie where she's asking him in robotic ways, you know, what his function is, and she says directive, and he says, and he shows her he's a garbage truck.
Yeah.
And then he asks her her directive. He says to her directive, and she's classified. And it's really cute because then later on in the movie, after Wally has been damaged and she's trying to find the pieces to fix him, and he's trying to tell her to do her directive, do what she was made for, to get the plant and put it you know, so that it would show them that the earth was livable. But at that point she changes her own directive, and she says, he gives her the plant and says directive, and she throws it away, and says her directive is to help him and to fix him. And then that's when he shows her that they have to go back to Earth for him to get fixed. But it's a really neat moment where you see, well, I think it was pretty clear that was not the intent of their design, for them to be able to override their own directive. But because of the emotional response that they have to each other, she's able to override her own directive. And I love it. It's an amazing piece of art, like you say, but it's also an amazing philosophy, like philosophical work. Just amazing. Anyway,
yeah. So getting into
I could go on forever about it. I love I love. I'm a huge science fiction fan. That's my favorite genre of literature. Some of my favorite movies are these kind of apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic, or space exploration type stories, and so I get really excited about a movie that is a post-apocalyptic story. So anyways.
Okay, so song. Getting into the first verse, it says, you see tonight it could go either way, hearts balanced on a razor blade. This is where it gets really, the next part is where it gets really good. It says, we're designed to love and break, and to rinse and repeat it all again. So, as I said, the first verse is about Wally. So this is telling us what his purpose is. The line "to rinse and repeat all again" feels very much like what he's doing on Earth, just every single day going out and making this trash and stuff and gathering it all up. And even though the Wall-E robots probably weren't necessarily actually designed to break, like it says in the song here, it does remind me of the fact that we, like, in some of the very first shots of the movie, we see that there were a bunch of other robots like Wall-E originally that were supposed to be cleaning up the Earth together, and that he is seemingly the only one still in operation, which is itself kind of a miraculous part of his self-expression in a way, because he is still alive because he collects things, because he does things outside of what his original directive is supposed to be.
And so he collects things, and by collecting things, he recognizes when he's malfunctioning, and he's able to. I love the part when he's driving and his track starts to go bad, and he
sees a good track on another one of the broken robots.
Yeah, on a broken wall, and he's like, and he's looking at it, and he's comparing the size, and you can see it's just a great scene where you can see that how he's gone outside of his function, and that's what's allowed him to survive. Whereas these other Wallies, when they break down, they don't have they know their function, but they don't know anything else, and so they've all over time broken down, and he's the last surviving Wall-E.
Yeah, and I think the line "hearts balanced on a razor blade" also kind of makes me think about the fact how Wall-E clearly has really strong emotional responses and emotional needs, and like one of the things that he loves the most is this tape that he has of the movie Hello Dolly.
Yeah.
And there's the one romance scene that he really likes, and so he's kind of longing for a romantic connection, even though he doesn't even fully understand what that means.
But yeah, and he wants to hold somebody's hand.
Yeah.
Right? That's an image that keeps coming up, as the hand holding, as they're singing. It only takes a moment to be loved a whole life long. And as they're singing that, they're holding hands, and he keeps narrowing in on that image of the hand holding, and then you see him opening and closing his own hand. So he's got this desire to be loved.
Yeah.
It's just, and what was the line?
Hearts balanced on a razor blade.
Yeah, I mean, that's clearly a line that's his heart is balanced on that razor blade, where he's lonely, and he wants something to interact with, somebody to interact with.
So then the second part of the verse here says, I get stuck when the world's too loud and things don't look up when you're going down. I know your arms are reaching out from somewhere beyond the clouds. So I'm going to start with the second part of this stanza again, because that's where it's really obvious. Because Eve comes from somewhere beyond the clouds. She comes down from the sky in a rocket ship, and the moment that Wall-E sees her on the planet, he's like instantly enamored.
Right.
And so that, I think, speaks to that very much. The first line also kind of reminds me of two different things. One is the big sandstorms that happen on the planet, that he literally gets stuck because when the sandstorms are happening, he has to stay in his little home to keep himself safe.
Right, and I think sometimes some people who watch this movie wonder why he's a robot, why does he have to be inside? And I think it's because sand would get into his gear. Boy, it'd damage him really badly.
And if that sand is like moving fast enough with all that wind and stuff, it could still absolutely damage metal. Like,
absolutely could do some serious damage to him. So he gets stuck inside when those sandstorms come. Yep.
But it also reminds me of when he goes to the Axiom, like the mothership of the Earth, for the first time, when he's chasing Eve down after she finds the plant and has to take it back, because he doesn't fit in on the ship very much, and he's used to a planet that is dead and quiet, and suddenly the world is too loud. He's surrounded by all of these robots and people, and he doesn't really know what to do.
Right. And he tries. It's funny as he tries when he's trying to get into the traffic, and then he accidentally knocks John, the guy, out of his seat, and he's trying to figure out what his thing is, and I also love when he's up at the captain's thing, and the robots are getting the captain ready for the day, and he's like, okay, and he starts massaging his toes.
Yeah. Because
like
funny.
You say, it's too loud, not just in terms of noise, audio, but loud in terms of just bustle of all these things happening around him that he's just not familiar with.
Yeah, and then in the chorus, you get the moment or the moments of Wall-E and Eve coming together. This is the romance part of the story. And so it's going to talk about the emotions that they have here, even though they're robots. So it says, you make me feel like my troubled heart is a million miles away. You make me feel like I'm drunk on stars and we're dancing out into space, which is a scene that happens in the movie. It's one of my favorite scenes. It's called, the scene and the song that plays during it is called Define Dancing. And it's a part where Wall-E and Eve are kind of flying around in space together. He's got like a fire hydrant that he's using to propel himself. at the same time that the captain who's just learning all these things about Earth, is learning about what dancing is. And so you have the kind of AI like, robot voice explaining the idea of dancing to him while dancing. Wally and Eve are flying around together in space and dancing like that. So literally dancing out into space.
Yeah.
And then the chorus finishes by just saying celestial, which is a reference to the stars, obviously, and space. But also could, in this context, be a reference to the miraculous nature of Wally and Eve's relationship.
Yeah.
So then getting into the second verse, and we're going to kind of shift perspectives to Eve, which I think is really cool. It says, I see the light shining through the rain, 1,000 colors in a brighter shade. Needed to rise from the lowest place, there's a silver lining that surrounds the gray. So this whole stanza really gives me the feeling of when Eve first goes to the Earth, and she, just like Wally, she has her directive that she's supposed to be following, but you can tell immediately, as soon as the rocket that brought her there leaves, that she is instantly reveling in the beauty of all of the things around her.
And the freedom of not being constantly watched.
Absolutely.
She starts off, her directive is to find a plant life to show that the earth is once again habitable. But I love how her first thing is not to go to her directive. Her first thing is just to fly all over the place, all excited and looking around and just being happy and excited.
And even though the Earth is covered in trash and in this movie you wouldn't necessarily think of it as being especially colorful per se, Eve still shares some of the interest that Wally has in all of these the things that are there, especially when they meet and he shows her a bunch of the things that he has collected, and they're all so interesting and different to her, and it's like 1,000 colors in a brighter shade. It's, even though technically the axiom is more colorful, these things all look so special in that way.
Exciting. Yeah, it's a more exciting moment. Actually, it specifically reminds me of is when Wally brings her into his little home.
Yeah.
And he's got the string of Christmas lights up.
Yeah.
And so you've got all the different colored lights.
And then he hands her a bunch of things, like the Rubik's Cube, for instance. That's colorful.
Which is colorful. and she does it, and then he hands her the light bulb, and when she grabs it, it lights up. And Wally's like, he wants to figure out why her hand can do that and his can't. And it's just a really and then he's got all the stuff in his space, so she gets to see all these trinkets and knickknacks and stuff that he's saved. So, thousands of things.
Yeah, and the last part of this stanza says there's a silver lining that surrounds the gray, and so that feels very much like the earth is gray and desaturated, and kind of sad as a result of all the things that have happened, but Wally is showing her that there's a silver lining. There's things about the earth that even in its darkest moments are special.
Right.
So then in the second stanza of the verse, this is going to be very similar to Wally's and parallel it, but a little different. It says, when I get lost, will you come back around? Things don't look up when you're going down. I know your arms, they're reaching out from somewhere beyond the clouds. So the difference here is the first line, when I get lost, will you come back around? And that immediately is making me think of when Eve actually finds the plant, her programming immediately, like she takes it and then it immediately forces her to shut down and not do anything in order to protect it until the ship comes back to pick her up, and she's not even like conscious during this time, and it's like being lost, but during that time, Wally stays with her the entire time. He's taking care of her. He's protecting her from the sandstorms and the rain.
And I love it when she finally gets to see that, because she's been unconscious that whole time. But then when the captain replays her memory so he can see what's what's going on, and she gets to kind of actually see what Wally had done for her in that moment, and I think that's a really touching scene.
Yeah, and then the part at the end here that I know your arms are reaching out from somewhere beyond the clouds. In this case, for Eve, can parallel and reference the fact that Wally follows her into space after she is in this unconscious state and she's taken up onto the ship. He clings onto it and follows her onto the Axiom because he doesn't know what's going on, but he cares about her and he wants to make sure that she's okay. So then,
I do love how he's so worried about her, Yeah. And when they're putting her on the little truck and taking her away, he's like, "What?" He's so worried about her. He's just trying so hard to get to her and to be there to make sure that she's safe and that nothing happens to her.
Yeah. So then we get the chorus repeated again. You make me feel like my troubled heart is a million miles away. You make me feel like I'm drunk on stars and we're dancing out into space, celestial. It just really invokes all of the same things of that.
Right.
Their
only from
relationship and their coming together.
It's interesting because the first time it's from his perspective, and then the second time you get it from her perspective, and it's interesting because he's been enamored with her the whole time.
Yeah.
She's still primarily functioning under her directive. Although we know that she's not completely, because when she first gets to Earth, she doesn't immediately go into the directive, but she follows
right.
But she's still primarily functioning under the directive. But then I think by the time they're actually dancing in outer space, that scene, she's by that time has kind of bypassed her directive, and she's having fun. With Wally, and she giggles and laughs, and there's not a lot of dialogue because they're robots who are not programmed to speak to each other, but they the little couple of words that they say it's just really meaningful. But I think when you get to the chorus this time and you think about it in her perspective, it's just a whole nother meaning to that, and another layer to that chorus.
And then the last part of the song, before we get the chorus repeating at the end, is possibly the best part for speaking to the story of Wally, which is this bridge into the final couple choruses. And it says, "We were made to be nothing more than this, finding magic in all the smallest things. The way we notice, that's what really matters. Let's make tonight go on and on and on." So we come back around to this idea of what these robots were made to be, what's their original purpose. It says we were made to be nothing more than this. They were created for these simple directives and not really anything more.
Right, and for a functionality that sole purpose was to serve the human race and not have any personal functionality. Their functionality, each one was created with a particular function to serve the human race, and that's it. That's what they were meant for.
And yet they're able to come together and be able to express themselves and have these emotions and this relationship because
and desire.
Because they're finding magic in all the smallest things. That's what we see Wally doing from the very beginning, the way he's collecting all of these small trinkets of human society, that they really are magical to him, and that feeling of meaning that he gets from them is what brings him and Eve together originally.
And really, in the end, it's that makes him the hero of the human race, because in the end, he's the one who ends up having to save the human race and bring them back to Earth. And it's so it's really, but it's only because of his his just awe of these small, simple things. Yeah. And even holding hands. Right? He wants to hold somebody's hand. It's a small, simple thing, but to him it's so meaningful.
Which is why the next line of the song says, the way we notice, that's what really matters. What really matters is the way that they notice these things, these small and simple things that make life meaningful and worth living. And because of that meaning, they want to make tonight go on and on and on, because that moment is so special and magical.
Right, just like it says in the song that he listens to over and over and over again. It only takes a moment to know that you can be loved for all life long. But also, I think when you're talking about that, there's the they want to make this last, but there's the point, and I think this is really touching and meaningful to this part of the song, when Wally gets crushed. And so he's not able to function, and so when they get to Earth, Eve is able to find the motherboard that that will fix him. The problem is that when you put a new motherboard, it's like his brain. It's like you're giving him a brain transplant, and he loses all of his memory, and he becomes again just the functional robot with the directive to take care of the trash. And it's a really sad moment, because he's in his own little house, and he takes his own trinkets, things that he's gathered up, and he puts them and he smashes them all together into a cube of trash, and Eve is just devastated, because this all the memories that he had of her are gone. All the memories he had are. And then she gives him that little robot kiss by putting her forehead to his, and it has that little spark of electricity between them. It's just such a genius little writing moment, and that kind of revives his memories, even though he's got a whole new motherboard. It revives his memories, and then he's all excited as he sees Eve, and she's holding his hand. He's like, he's looking down at her hand and holding his, and he's all excited, and but it's that idea of, we want to make this last forever, and there's that one moment where you're afraid this isn't going to last, because Wally, in saving the human race, sacrificed himself and his own identity. But I do love how in the movie Eve is able to help restore that by with that little kiss. And that goes back to the beginning of the movie, when he's listening to the song, and the song he's listening to in the beginning of the movie is the one that says, "And we won't come back until we've kissed a girl." And that's like,
I've never thought about that.
So he goes off into space, but the song is, "We won't come back until we've kissed a girl," and then you have that kiss at the end, which is the fulfillment of the song that he's watching in the beginning. And it's just a great, what do you call it, when you get that reward at the end of the movie?
A great payoff.
Yeah, it's a great payoff if you pay attention to what he's wanting and desiring, and then that payoff of the kiss that revives him and brings him back, so that they can make it last forever.
And so then, as in this song, as the bridge and chorus repeat, the very last line, the very last word that we end on here is celestial, reminding us of that miraculous moment at the end of the movie, where Wally is brought back from essentially death by the power of love. And that's the story of Wally.
Absolutely. It's just fantastic movie. It's a great song for that movie. I love it. And just for those of you who are listening, I'm going to tell you how this works sometimes. sometimes we don't have a theme song. And so we were driving into work this morning, not an hour ago, and I was telling Seth, I don't think we have a theme song today, so we're going to have to come up with something. And this song, Celestial, was playing, and Seth said, well, this is a theme song for WALL-E. And I was like, oh, really? And so I had him...
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it until listening to it this morning.
Right. And so then I had to play the song over for me. It's like, oh, you're right. That is a theme song for WALL-E. And so sometimes it might sound like we've prepared and planned and this stuff out, and really most of these theme songs are just things that came to us in the moment, and that's what we're like, wow, this is a really good theme
this all came from a brief cursory glance over the lyrics right before we started recording.
Yeah, so when you hear these theme songs that we're talking about, these are things that come to us oftentimes in the very moment right before we're recording, and so it's an interesting.
You should try it at home.
Thing to know. You don't have to. It's not like you have to do a lot of research, but what you do have to do is listen to a lot of music.
Yeah.
Read a lot of books and watch good media. You have to be involved in good media. But if you're involved in good media, these things will come. And it's interesting because I think, Seth, that it is, I think there is a spiritual component to all of this stuff that we're doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. I think that the Spirit can come to you in many ways. And as you and I are working on this project, I feel like sometimes it feels like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then in the moment, it comes to us. And to me, that's a spiritual prompting. And so this morning, you were guided spiritually to have the right material for this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, after this morning, I absolutely believe it. Yeah.
And that's one of the things is...
It's a miracle like in the movie.
Yes. I think it's important to remember that the Spirit can always be with you in all things that you're doing. It's not only in church things.
It's like the Force.
But
on subject with sci-fi movies.
Yes, exactly. No, it's exactly true. It's the Holy Ghost can guide you in all things. And as Seth and I are trying to continue this podcast and keep this going, and we're having fun doing it, but also hopefully those of you who are listening are enjoying listening to what we're doing, and I'm hoping that you're learning a little bit of how it works to put together a theme song for media, but then also to apply that to yourself and be able to put a theme song together for yourself, and which helps you to understand yourself better. And maybe if you've got a child or a spouse or a friend who is struggling with a certain problem or situation, being able to have a theme song for them in that moment. I do this for my children occasionally, where they'll tell me about something they're struggling with, and I'll be like, oh, there's a theme song for that. Let's listen to it. Or there's a scripture story for that. Let's read it.
Yeah.
Or, being able to relate to people through narrative, whether it's music, stories, scriptures, movies, it helps people to know and feel like you really understand what they're struggling with.
And getting that kind of understanding of other people's perspectives that you really only can through storytelling is the primary reason that I love stories so much. It's the reason that I'm a writer.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, one of the moments, I think, with Genevieve and I, where I think Genevieve really understood that I was really listening to her, not just, Genevieve likes to write stories or come up with stories and stuff, and all through her teenage years, she would tell me stories while we were washing dishes or while we were doing this work, and she for a long time thought that I was just being nice and pretending to listen to her, and that was good enough. She felt like that was good enough. Dad's at least pretending to listen to me, and that's nice. And then one day, I was listening to the Styx, which is a band that I really like, and I was listening to Mr. Roboto, And as that song came on, I said, "Oh, Genevieve, I think this is the theme song for a story that you and Seth have been developing that you were telling me about." And so we listened to the song, and she was kind of awestruck, and she was like, "You were really listening to me when I was telling you about that story."
Yeah. And I can confirm it fits the story really well. It's a robot based kind of TV series that we came up with together.
Yeah, and as we talked about the story in relation to the song, Genevieve was like, "So you've been listening to me all along, all these stories I've been telling you, you've actually been listening?" I said, "Yes, of course I have." But that was a moment where she, as I shared a theme song with her, it opened up an understanding between us and Genevieve and I've always gotten along, but that was a moment where she felt like we're no longer just getting along, but she felt like, wow, there's a connection that's much stronger because she knew that I was listening and understanding the things that she was talking about. So that's what we're saying is these theme songs sometimes come in the moment that we need them. And hopefully as you listen, you can understand how that works, and you can have and develop theme songs in your life and in the lives of your family and friends that will help you to have a greater connection with them. That's kind of what I kind of hope that this whole podcast series that we do with the What Stories Say, I hope that as you listen and learn what these stories are saying to myself, to Seth, and to Jessica when she's with us, that you will understand that these stories can have their own meanings for you. They don't have to be the same meanings that we get out of them. But we're having fun doing this, but I'm also hoping that it's an educational moment for those of you who are listening. So our next podcast, we will be doing the Frozen. Is that right?
Yeah, that's for later this week on Wednesday.
So we'll be doing Frozen, and then we will we'll continue to do the theme songs, and we may not have a theme song every single week because that inspiration may not come every single week. So if we don't have one, we'll still be here and we'll still talk about theme songs. We'll still talk about media and those things. But if we do have one, great. We'll keep doing it as long as they keep coming to us.
Yeah.